it's Quana back again with another review. Hope you guys are doing awesome. So I had an opportunity to check out Disney Pixar's Elemental in theaters last week with my family. And so I'm coming to you today as a film fan and also a parent to bring you a mommy movie review. And if you fall in either one of these categories, then this review is for you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my family's experience watching the film and also my own individual take on the film. But I'm going to try to avoid spoilers as much as possible. Elemental tells the story of a young girl by the name of Ember who is a fire creature, and she comes from a family of immigrant fire people, and they immigrate to Element City where all the elements live together harmoniously. But as we soon see, fire is definitely the bottom rung of the elements, as all the other elements are afraid of them. They start their own store and they are seemingly here for a better life. And life seems to be going very well for this family until they come in contact with Wade, a water being, and he's also a inspector who comes to inspect their business and has perhaps the potential to close them down. Ember must do whatever she can to save her family's business while slowly finding that her and Wade have more in common than she originally thought. And we soon seen a budding romance in the works. And for the rest of that, you would have to check out the actual movie. The film, from an artistic standpoint, in terms of the visuals, is stellar. Pixar doesn't really know how to make a ill-produced project in terms of appearances, and the animation is absolutely gorgeous. And I mean that because at first, when I first found out about this movie, I looked at the colors. You have Ember and Wade on most of the promo, and I felt very much like Inside Out. And I was like, okay, you know the running gag about Pixar. Every Pixar film is about take this thing and give it feelings, and that is what the film is about. So you get Toy Story. It's like, take toys. What if toys had feelings? You get Toy Story. What if cars had feelings? You get Cars. What if feelings had feelings? You get Inside Out. You kind of get the drift. And so now we're at what if elements had feelings? Or the fire had this breathtakingly translucent quality to it. With the exception of the earth and cloud element, it felt like they just didn't spend as much time developing those elements. But the water and the fire people were absolutely stunning. The score is really nice with this film as well, and I definitely think if you go see it in theaters, stick around for the credits, because the song that appears in the credits is also a very beautiful song. The story in and of itself takes on a lot of different things. In many ways, it's a romance story, but it's also kind of a coming of age tale, which does make sense if you look at it as a coming of age story, because you usually would have all of those different elements kind of thrown in there together. It's just that it handles all of those elements in a very thick kind of way. And so you feel as though you're not quite sure what part of the film you really want to focus in on. Now, I'm going to give a teeny weeny spoiler, but I already hinted to it to say that the main issue with this film's story and its plot elements is the fact that it doesn't really land the point as well. It leaves a lot up to ambiguity. And when you're talking about a film that is, done by Pixar, yes, it's meant for adults, but also kids are going to be watching this. There's a lot of things that are happening in it that kind of feel a little heavy-handed. So the main premise is, of course, that you have Ember, who is fire, and Wade, who is water, and they're kind of having this budding romance. And what happens when you mix fire and water, right? That's not necessarily a good situation. But also you have her family that is very anti-water, because they have been treated so poorly in this society. So it's very much an allegory for interracial relationships, but the nuances of her family being an immigrant family. And so you kind of have the immigrant narrative with her wanting to please her family, her struggling with meeting her parents' expectations and what she wants for her own life. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I actually thought that there were elements of it that were really nice. It's just that it felt very overwhelming. And then the elements that were added into the film that are meant to resemble our own reality, because it is an allegory, it left a lot of confusion. My husband and I, on the ride home, were talking about what race or group of people were represented by the water people. And at one point in the movie, they seem like they're very much at the hierarchy, at the top tier of the hierarchy. And then at some times when they're treated by Emperor's family, it feels as though they're at maybe at a lower class than them, or at least that they view them as being beneath them. And it's very complex and confusing how that actually happens in the film. So there's just moments where you're not sure that in this class system that they're trying to set up for the film, who is exactly falling where in that class system. I think that there were just elements of Elemental that didn't really work within the story they were trying to tell. I think the biggest issue is that Disney, by and large, keeps trying to find ways to talk about these highly complex things, such as race, such as gender and equality and sexuality in their films in a way that is tolerable for families and for kids, but it doesn't actually make sense. And it would almost be better to just tell the story and just make it about humans. There are times when allegories work very well, and then there are times when it's like, let's just talk about this plainly and show the story as it would be unveiled for young children. In fact, why not make it a tale about a young person? We haven't really seen too many Pixar movies or too many Disney movies in general that are centered around young kids kind of navigating and seeing the world for themselves. For instance, there's one joke that I will kind of spoil a little bit in the movie where we see two apple trees, and Ember and Wade are going by and they see the apple trees, and the apple trees are plucking apples from each other. And it's like they're surprised that they just got caught doing this, and they're trying to make up an excuse for it. As adults, we very much recognize that the fact that they are surprised that they just got caught doing this and trying to make up an excuse for it means that this action of pruning represents something else, right? But of course the kids don't actually know that unless your kids are a little bit more maybe aware of adults' things. Then we had to like address that and say, well, they were having, mommy daddy time, but they don't really know what mommy daddy time is. So you get what I'm saying here. It's just kids are smart enough to ask those questions when they're not in on the joke. You can only do that so much because kids are smart enough to realize that they're not in on the joke. That said, did we enjoy the film? Absolutely. Like I said, the animation was gorgeous. The story was good enough. The songs were great. And it hits all of the notes that you want. Now, I will say this, it wasn't nearly as emotional as some of Pixar's other offerings. I have cried a ton during a good Pixar movie. I cried during Toy Story 3 as a whole grown woman without kids in the theater with a group of teenagers behind me. I cried during Inside Out. I cried during Turning Red. But those emotional beats and the moments where the film actually would have kind of led to that emotion, it didn't come. And at first I was like, is that me? Am I becoming stoic? But then I remembered, no, I literally cried during The Little Mermaid. I almost cried during Across the Spider-Verse. So it's nothing wrong with my ability to cry during a film anymore. It was just that I did not resonate with these characters strong enough to generate that emotional response that the film wanted me to give. And so for that, I have to say that this movie kind of falls in more of like a B-. And you guys know around these parts, I do kind of grade on a curve. So a lot of people would probably give this a much lower rating. I don't think it's as bad as all that. I mean, people were actually like really being hard on this movie. And there was nothing wrong with the movie just in terms of a general plot. It certainly didn't warrant it getting like an F score or a D score or anything like that. I could kind of understand if someone wanted to lean more heavily toward the C, especially if animation is their main genre of film that they really appreciate, then I could see this falling a little bit lower. But as a film overall, I had nitpicks about it and some structural issues, but not enough to downgrade it to a C, because ultimately the animation is beautiful. What's at the core of the story that Peterson was trying to tell, a story that was very personal to him and to several other animators on the film project who come from immigrant families. I think that the story was there. It just needed a little bit more pruning. All right, so let me know down below in the comments if you've had an opportunity to check out Elemental with your family. What did you guys think? Do you plan on seeing it? It's still in theaters. It's not doing great, but I think in a post-COVID world where so many films go straight to streaming, and it has already been such a huge blockbuster summer with families probably spending money in the theaters to go see The Little Mermaid or Across the Spider-Verse, it's kind of not that much of a surprise that this one wouldn't do as well. I think Disney needs to be a little bit more selective. You know, Across the Spider-Verse is Sony, but with Little Mermaid and then with this coming out, I maybe would have put a little bit more space between my projects so that I wasn't overwhelming audiences with who wanted to see a Disney pick, because I think more audiences were going to see The Little Mermaid in support of Halle Bailey than are going to go see Elemental. But those are just my 2 cents. But if you want to hear more, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Toodles.